We want to make sure your late game doesn't become a mindless grind of spamming the enter button.
That's right, finally what I've been asking for, the information has been delivered. This video is about nukes in Humankind, but more than that actually, about wider changes to keep combat fresh in the late game, and other gameplay elements like railway, cargo planes, trade, and some advanced combat. Let's discuss everything that the developers have introduced to us today in this footage provided by them. There was an instant replay. Here it comes. Look at this nuke go, baby! Finally, we have information about it. Let's discuss that and more in this video, and I'll have lots of stuff on screen for you to delve into. So, for starters, I want to talk actually a bit about trade, map movement, about railways, cargo planes, and strategic resources in the late game. Basically, if you don't know, the developers put out a video. I'm going to show you all of the key footage, including this sweet helicopter footage, around changes to the late game. For starters, we know that in Humankind, to keep the late game spicy and interesting, we're seeing these changes to the relations, to trade, to treaties, and to crisis management in the late game. What does that mean? Well, first and foremost, we've got a lot of quick ways to move around, to move goods, to move military units and civilian units. That comes with the information that we should naturally expect. Humankind will have railway connections to speed up those slow roads from the early game. It will also have, as you can see here, very helpfully cargo planes. Finally, a 4X game seems to be using aerial transport links. You can see them here to their advantage. You know, if we think about Civilization 6 and Civ 5, indeed the entire Sid Meier's 4X franchise, we have roads, we have trade over the ocean, we then move through into the railroad. What those games don't do well, and what it looks like Humankind is going to do very well, is to utilize cargo transit and cargo connections using aeroplanes. Finally, right? We finally see that play out. How will it work in practice? Well, they told us in their video, and we've seen some footage of it already. Here you can see connecting to the mighty Parry is this, a train station. It takes up a tile on the map, which is nice, helps to build that city experience. You can see here, equally, airports. The same thing applies. It uses a tile on the map. You can see it provides money, science and influence, and adjacency bonuses with nearby tiles. Moreover, though, it can actually allow us to move troops very quickly. Now, take a look at this. The geosynchronous satellite. Again, it's a tile that they're placing down. They told us that this works a lot like Wonders, but more extreme. Okay, this is the space race, by the way. This is another element of keeping that late game interesting. You can see here in the contemporary era, leading to the stars, the space orbital technologies right at the end of the tech tree. This is part of a famed specialization down the tech tree route through the space program. And the developers told us that these grand endeavors, what they're called, harder to complete than Wonders, but follows the same in-game structure where multiple cities can connect to it and help you indeed achieve fame using those massive multi-city projects. Now what you're seeing on screen is a little bit different. This is combat. This is a developer, but more broadly, this is combat in Humankind. And what they told us was huge. Basically, to keep the late game spicy and to keep late game combat interesting, they're doing this. Look at this massive combat screen. In the early game, combat is limited to relatively few tiles, but as we move through into the late game, and as the developers rightly put it, there's more of a focus on advanced range, advanced weapons. That means long-scale combats, where initially geography will be key. They talked about focus on trench warfare, on entrenching your units, and really the key power that low ground versus mid ground versus high ground has. But more than that, they said, okay, you go through this era, let's say World War I in real life, where trenches, where ranged combat, where all of those things are useful. But as we move through, particularly with units like this, with artillery, and as we move through into more modern artillery, indeed airstrikes, the map comes out. We receive a huge change to the scale of the map and to the scale of combat. You can see this artillery is striking some 10 tiles away. And while that might feel a little bit odd to us coming from Civilization, where everything is either 2 or 3, if you came from Civ, that is, now we're seeing military power at scale. And this is the way it should be. Here you can see it with a squadron of fighters, even more extreme. This is big, okay? At a fundamental level, it's quite simple. Artillery in combat has a range of potentially 8, potentially 10 tiles, likewise with air units. But why this matters is because this should help, as I said at the start of the video, or more accurately, as the developers said at the start of the video, late game needs to be interesting, and what we're seeing here is some really advanced combat. We're seeing units actually be able to do what they can do in real life, okay? An artillery unit from the year 1000 should not have the same range as an advanced stealth bomber, okay? And some 4X games handle this fairly well, granted. You know, you have stealth bombers that can traverse the map in amazing ways, move from airport to airport without hassle, and indeed in Humankind that will be no different. But moreover, they can strike. They have advanced range, advanced power, and I think that's really exciting for Humankind's late game combat, and hopefully, with these adjustments, it should make it really, really interesting. Last but not least, I just wanted to cover a few little screen grabs from the video to have a look at some interesting things. For starters, take a look at the strategic bomber. It has a whopping 80 gold upkeep. So potentially here, these units, while they have massive range and power, could be really limited by money. Next up, I just wanted to grab this screenshot of the tech tree. I want you to note that you earn, firstly, 300 fame from researching the leading from the stars. That's the beginning of the space race. But also, cast your eyes to the top and you'll see some really far future technologies. Two that I'm particularly excited about are neural implants. You can see there's a fame boost there for them. I'm curious to see what exactly that is. I mean, most of these things have fame boosts, but crucially also, up the top here, exosuits. That's right, folks. It looks like some kind of giant death robot XCOM squad unit is coming to Humankind right at the end of the tech tree after the space orbital mission. It's pretty exciting and something to be excited about. Likewise, we can see how this in-game event, the Egyptians become Death Destroyer of Worlds, having completed the world's first nuclear test. Doing this, we suspect, will not only unlock fame, but also specific units. So there is a specialization within the broad fame victory condition system. Something interesting to reflect on, as we are now but days away from launching our own nuclear strike and playing Humankind on August 17th. Thank you very much for watching, and until then, I'll see you then.